Today the South Node is at 14 Scorpio and the North Node at 14 Taurus. And it goes through this particular degree over the next good few weeks until about the 12th of December. Unusually long period of time for the node to stay in a degree. So I think we have to understand that this degree is being emphasized. And the North Node speaks to our spiritual quest, the soul's purpose, the soul's journey. And the South Node, what was ours before we incarnated. So it tends to enable us to do things very easily and to know things very easily as well. It's what we don't really have to work very hard to master. So if we look at that first, the South Node, Scorpio 14, telephone linemen at work, networking. Insofar as none of us could ever access the full picture, therefore complete knowledge, we must interact with others to listen and to share our own ideas. The quality of these interactions is inextricably bound to the quality of the communication methods used. We learn that linguistics has great importance, yet so too does the technology that allows the exchange of words, the printing press, telephone wires, and the internet, and so on. So this is making the point that creating networks of cooperation and communication is what builds community. And we can therefore communicate in a widespread way our feelings and thoughts. It also speaks to the question of there being a concept of higher intelligence. In other words, the one that knows more. And if your connectedness, like the telephone wire system with the internet, if your connectedness is deep and expansive, then your intelligence is also. So we're looking at the facility within us to tap into a system of meeting other points of view, not necessarily by telephone. This is all to do with networking, meeting various people with different points of view and different skill sets. It's not a very romantic mystery, and it doesn't seem very esoteric, but it really is. Our ability to be who we are depends upon having set in place an infrastructure that allows that, even on the level of repairing the computer or the car, because we can't do it, and therefore we can't have a computer or a car without the network of people that enable that. And if we don't have a computer or car or whatever it is for you, a guitar maybe, then a certain aspect of our being is just closed to us. It's not available. We need the tools of our trade to be who we are, and therefore we need the people within our network for us to be who we are. It's a requirement. Now, if we look at the other end of the equation, the 14th degree of Taurus, a rather strange image of shellfish groping and children playing. And the interpretation for this one, self-development through play. We emerge from an unconscious form towards full awareness through self-discovery and attending to our own self-centered interests. This is often better done playfully on the threshold between the sea and the land, that is halfway between animal and adult, half unconscious, half awake, as we are when children are playing on the beach. So it's a metaphor, the shellfish groping. They're sea creatures and not very bright at that, and they're right on the unconscious end of a spectrum, whereas children playing are bright new intelligences using their creative imagination to have fun and to be self-contained in that. And we're seeing a contrast between the linemen, the South Node, and now the shellfish groping, children playing at the other end. Shellfish groping, they don't have any communication at all. They're feeling their way forward in the dark. And the children aren't being instructed. They're also feeling their way forward in the dark by playing and seeing what they enjoy doing without instruction. And this contrast between being a part of the community and informed on the one hand, and on the other hand, going your own way, looking after your own interests, learning through play, in other words, trial and error, and so on. This self-sufficiency is what Mark Edmund Jones focuses on rather more than did Dane Rudhyar. So we've got shellfish groping and children playing, Mark Edmund Jones. This is a symbol of the self-sufficiency of existence on each separate level of being, thus preserving the lower orders and facilitating the progressive development of higher ones. Implicit in the symbolism is the connection between that life which is reaching out on a broad evolutionary scale and that which comes to its immediate maturity through a genuine individuality. Genuine individuality, this is the children at play. They're not pretending, they're not trying to be anything. This is what we love doing, and that's what we're doing it for, that's why we're doing it. On the one hand, and on the other hand, the evolutionary development suggested by the sea creature coming out of the sea, as we did countless billions of years ago, perhaps. And what this means is, for us personally, is that we have to acknowledge two sides of our being, the unconscious side and the conscious side. That which is symbolized by the sea, the unconscious, we feel it. The watery kind of emotional side to our being, we feel things. And yet the creative, inventive intelligence that we have, we work things out. We find out what suits us best. That's a good definition of intelligence to some extent. What you do strategically to make your own best interests known and fulfilled. Now, the North Node, going through this degree, is going to emphasize something deep within us that we have to reconcile. We are unconscious beings to some significant extent, and we are aware beings to some significant extent. And if we think of ourselves as completely aware, we understand everything that's going on, it's just wrong. That's real foolishness, to believe that you can understand the situation in hand fully. It's just nonsense. But a lot of people do. And yet, on the other hand, to believe that unconsciously, intuitively, instinctually, you cannot cope is also wrong. The animal part of us is designed to cope without thinking. And so we've got both of those aspects of self that have a feature of our evolution, have something to give us in that evolutionary sense. And this particular degree of 14 Taurus is saying, with the North Node there, your soul is not only to do with exploring the light within you, it is also to do with allowing the darker energies to find their place in a wholesome way within your community, within your lifestyle, and to balance those two things. And this is in contradistinction to many, many spiritual teachings. A lot of spiritual teachings really promote light, as though darkness is wrong or bad or to be avoided. And it's just not true. What we call darkness and what is known as evil, first of all, they're not the same thing. And secondly, there is as much evil done as in the name of light as in the name of darkness. Much of religion is the promotion of a distortion of light. It creates evil outcomes, and therefore is not to be considered wholesome, even though it is light. But equally, what is dark is the desire nature within us, that which yearns to have something fulfilled within us, and it's possibly wholesome. It is subject to distortion as much as the light is, and when you're talking about distortion of these energies, then you may well be moving into something more properly called evil, whatever that is. But here we're discussing the fact that both light and dark, both conscious and unconscious, both playful creativity and instinctual groping around until it feels okay, both of those methods are how we progress. And the soul, the North Node, is coming into alignment now with this degree, saying, correct your misapprehensions about what is right and wrong, what is good and evil, what is spiritual and what is not. It is not simply defined as light and dark. That's not really the case. There are some examples where light is evil and dark is good. And the shellfish grouping, is that not darkness personified? A blind animal groping around, it's darkness and fumbling and making mistakes. That's the unconscious part of us which is awakening. You can't bring light to the dark unless you acknowledge the dark's existence and its right to be. So this is the time for us to look very, very carefully at whether or not we're wholesome in our understanding of self. The self is not well promoted in spiritual teachings. It's called the ego, and it's said with a slightly disdainful tone of voice. Oh, that's coming from the ego. Well, where else could it come from? It came from me, therefore it must be mine. And if it's mine, it's my ego that's delivering it. The idea that because we have an ego, we're egotistical, in other words, self-important, that's false. That's one of these teachings of light that's actually a distortion and creates bad results in the world. And it may be that you've inherited some of those unconsciously, because we've been brought up in the West in a Christian world where the idea of self-importance and self-love are disdained. Whereas the more modern interpretation of this is that we have to have self-love. And to some extent we have to claim some self-importance. If we don't make a claim on the world, then we're not going to create the vehicle for our soul's furthest reach. It's optimal evolutionary creative expression. So we have to use the ego. And it may be that you're using it a little bit less proudly than you could or you should, because you've been taught not to. And those people that have taught you not to have actually found themselves in a position of some importance throughout the ages. The priests and the politicians and the people with the money, they're the ones that are telling you not to make your claim. The ones who actually are making a bigger claim and don't want it challenged. So we're saying here in this degree, wake up. Wake up to the fact that your unconscious side, your darker side, and your conscious side, your lighter side, have to find this balance between them. And if you don't find that balance, you can't go forward. The way in which to find that balance is given in the clue of the South Node through networking. In other words, meet lots and lots and lots of different people. And then you'll find an expression will be there for your darker side and your lighter side without any risk of distortion.